I wanted to talk about things in the film, like my mother's talking about Kinsey and the Kinsey Institute, which I've known about for years. Is for a lot of people don't is one of the most disturbing things you'll ever read. We can talk about that in a minute, but you have it down to the education platform. I forget the names of the company, but they were founded by like actual communists and pedophiles. I mean, you actually do track this since the 20s, as far back as the 1920s. So, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, it goes deep. This is something that it's, even just the connection between Kinsey and Playboy is something that blows a lot of people's minds.
That blew my mind.
Hugh Hefner, when Kinsey found him, was just this normal sort of college frat boy who had not had sex yet even. Okay. And the connection where you see, about the bow tie, that the Playboy bunny has the same bow tie that Alfred Kinsey wore and was like his staple thing. That's not a mistake. That was on purpose. And this was all laundered through even legal groups. And they were using Playboy money to change laws in America to normalize sex to kids, and so this is, again, you go back to that time period, the mere exposure effect was very important to them, because let's talk about porn. Okay. When I was a kid, what was normalized for porn was you might have a friend whose dad has a Playboy under their mattress. Okay. That was what was considered like, okay, that is something you could expect to occur. Okay. Nowadays, the expectation is a child will see porn by the time they're 13. Your average age child sees porn now is somewhere between 11 and 12 years old, and it's going down every year. Okay. And it's not Playboy. We're talking about some of the raunchiest, messed up, degrading porn you could possibly imagine. And I'd say one of the more heartbreaking things that I saw over the past few years was this interview with college age girls where they were asking them, what is normal? And the stuff that was normal to them was the most degrading, violent, horrific stuff that no young lady should ever be accepting of being treated like. And that has sadly become normalized through the normalization of hardcore porn to children, because they start to see it as an expectation for, the girls see it as that's what I'm expected to do and accept, and the boys see it as that's what I'm expected to do. And so all of that normalization, it's like we totally flipped things on its head, because the other thing was, back in the day, if you had to be the type of guy who your only way you could ever see a naked girl was to be a peeping Tom or something, you were a total weirdo, and like a criminal weirdo. But nowadays, it's totally celebrated as long as you're paying $3 on OnlyFans and subscribing to some girl who's in many cases being pimped out or trafficked, and you're paying to see her naked. How did we flip that paradigm? Because that's not what masculinity looks like. Masculinity is protection. It's treating women the right way. It's being a protector. But we flipped all these ideas on their head and told men that it's masculine to be purveyors of porn, to treat women like shit, and be okay with all this, and then train your boys up that that's okay as well. And it's not. That's not what masculinity is. That's not what God intended for us as men. We were intended to be protectors, to stand for our wives, for our kids, for our mothers. And if we're not doing that, shame on us. And so that's a big thing with this movie is I really want to wake men up, because I know over the past few years, my wife and I have done a good job of waking up women. I can see it in the analytics. I can see it in the people who show up to our events. Tons of women are waking up. It's time for the men to start taking some risks again. Okay, our ancestors did it.
That's what I feel I'm here to do, is to challenge the men to be as brave as me and stop being big pussies.
Absolutely.
That's what I think I'm supposed to do.
They do need to be as brave as you, Roseanne. And that's really the truth, because to save this generation, it's going to take men being men again. There's the interview we have with the victim of trafficking in the movie, Kaylin Washington, and it couldn't be clearer when she puts it the way she puts it, because this is somebody sold over 1,000 times online as a child. And she says, we need men to be men again. We need men to stand up, to be fathers, to be present in the community.
We need the real toxic kind. That's what we need, is the super duper toxic.
Well, that was part of the flip to call it toxic when it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't toxic. That's how they brainwashed everyone. They said it was toxic, the good part of men. And guilted men into becoming toxic.
I think the whole thing is this, where I'm going to say, but I still want to hear about the movie. But I think I like that you call it a war on children, which it definitely is, but it's a war on your soul. It's a war on the human soul.
Yeah. It's a war on language, a war on humanity, a war on parents, a war on your soul. This is ultimately, if you drive down to the deepest part of this, it is a fight of good and evil. It doesn't matter if you're right, you're left, whatever. It's about, are you good, are you evil? Because any good person should be able to watch the War on Children film and walk out of it saying, I need to redouble my efforts to make sure I'm doing everything I can to save this country and our kids, because our country is larger than just a country. It's an idea, and it's also, you know, a bastion not just of historical liberty, but of possibility. And if we don't save it, possibility disappears. You know, there's this old story that was told by Ronald Reagan back in the day, and it was that he was overhearing a conversation between two businessmen and a Cuban who came over here after Castro took over. And the two businessmen are talking about how lucky they are to not have experienced what the Cuban had felt. And the Cuban starts laughing and they can't figure out why. And they go, what's so funny? And he says, you guys are not the lucky ones. I am. I had somewhere to run to. You don't. And that's the truth, is that if America falls, all of the virtues, paradigms, honor, belief systems that you value as a good person, they're gone too. Because America and the idea of it, the possibility of it, was what really held together a lot of the possibilities worldwide. And once that's gone and that vanishes and communists have total control over this country, well, they have control of the world then.
Yeah. Which is terrifying.
Well, also, always they're in on a heist. Because I used to kind of be a commie, so till I saw how it worked, that it wasn't no different than the capitalist heist, and that Marx himself was paid by the biggest capitalists in the world to come up with that phony horse shit, where people actually go, oh, we're going to create a utopian thing. All we got to do is get rid of these assholes everywhere. Mm-hmm. Then we're going to live in utopia.
There's the difference between the system we're living in and what we should be living in, and that's crony capitalism versus actual capitalism. Actual capitalism has the ability to save people and pull them out from poverty and make their lives better. And you can see over the arc of history that it can and will do that if you do it the right way. What's not okay and what's perverted is the crony capitalism we've seen that is not capitalism at all. And that's a company like Amazon, where they ran at a loss on purpose to eat up market share. And then eventually, once they have enough market share, they use it to crush every small business they can. And then once they have no competition, then they can raise prices and then they have profits. And they did that for a very long time, running at a loss on purpose. And that should not be a part of a capitalist business plan, to say, hey, let's lose money for so long that we're able to just eat up market share and then destroy people. And I think once you start to sort of look at things through a lens where you say, you know, capitalism looks a whole lot more like small business, you know, I think that things really start to change, you know?
Yeah.
Well, that was the thing that made small business work, was, that made capitalism work and democracy and creation of a middle class, was that very thing. So, you know, they know all that, but their job is, how can we twist these words around so they mean the exact opposite of what they say, and we can bamboozle and hoodwink people so they line up for the trains. That's all it is. And people, they are addicted to bullshit. I said this in 2012 when I ran, and it was exposed to me that the left works for the right. They're all the same damn thing. There's no dissent. There's no resistance. Are you kidding me? They have the exact same thing in mind, and it's just money and slaves.
Power.
Money and slaves to collect.
When you look at, like, you look at Ukraine, okay? You know, the Ukraine issue in the United States Senate is very eye-opening to people who did not understand this. And I think a lot of people have sort of woken up over just that by itself, because when you look at them, they don't look like two different parties on the Ukraine issue. They look like they're best buds. You know, they all agree on sending our money over there, while people languish in places like Palestine, Ohio, East Palestine, Ohio, or, you know, in Maui. They're just left to languish and suffer and wait, you know, and hopefully you guys get just barely enough to where you don't riot, You know, that's kind of the goal. Let's try to make sure they don't riot in East Palestine. Let's make sure they don't riot in Maui, but we'll give them just the bare minimum to ensure that doesn't happen. Maybe. Okay. But then when it comes to something like Ukraine, it's like, okay, money printer's on, make the money printer go burr. You know, they want that money. They're making it rain. I mean, this is like a strip club in Miami now over in Ukraine.
Kidding.
And you've got all of these oligarchs spending money. It's weird that I say Miami because I hear this actually from a Florida real estate agent recently. He says, Robby, I'm selling so many expensive properties to Ukrainian oligarchs. And it's not just me. This is happening across Florida. Where are they getting this money? And I'm like, are you stupid? They're getting it from us. This is our money.
That's American taxpayer money.
It's not rocket science. I mean, they get an infusion of cash and suddenly their kids are moving here into very nice places and they're buying up property here, very nice places. You really don't need to be a mathematician to put 2 and 2 together. Oh, you see?